As you know, the intercommunal negotiations in Cyprus started many years ago, back in 1968, and it's been 47 years that the intercommunal negotiations continue between the two communities. Meanwhile, along these 47 years, there are some turning points in the Cyprus peace negotiations. The 77, 79 high-level agreements are quite important. 93 Galis set of ideas was a framework agreement. And then in 2004, there was a United Nations peace plan by the name the Annan Plan, which, as you know, the result of it was supported by 65% of the Turkish Cypriots, but rejected by 76% of the Greek Cypriots. But since then, meaning since the 2000s, there is almost like a gentleman's agreement, like a principle, that whatever peace plan that the two leaders will reach, it will put to simultaneous separate referenda of the two sides in Cyprus. That means that whatever, if there is a miracle, let's say, and the two leaders reach a deal, a settlement, that is going to be put to the simultaneous referendum of the Greek Cypriots and the Turkish Cypriots. In that sense, if you think rationally, what people think is very important. Because at the end of the day, it will be the people, the Greek Cypriots and the Turkish Cypriots, who are going to either accept or reject the future agreement. So, basing on this fact that the public opinion is very important, what I'm going to present to you today is a series of public opinion poll results that myself and a team of other Turkish and Greek Cypriots have been conducting for the last 7 years or so. So the results of these polls that I'm going to show you have been conducted by our team on an island-wide scale, meaning we interviewed about 1,000 Greek Cypriots and 1,000 Turkish Cypriots since 2008. And these are roughly the results in a timeline series. So the results I'm going to present to you are not going to be like a one-shot picture of a specific time, but I will also try to show to you how are some of the negotiation issues are viewed by the Greek and Turkish Cypriots along the last, let's say, 7 or 8 years. Okay. So we asked, these are some of the surveys that we have conducted since 2007, 2008. And the last one is 2015, July, so it's quite fresh. Just to give you an idea, this was one question that we asked people over and over many times. Why don't we start from the bottom graph? We asked people, do you have hope that the Cyprus problem will be resolved through a bizonal, bicommunal federation, which is this UN parameters that the two sides, at least on paper, agreed upon, that they will create a bizonal, bicommunal federation. If you look at the results here, this was a few years ago, by the way, the orange is not good news. As you see here, 65% of Greek Cypriots are saying that they have no hope that the Cyprus problem will be resolved through a federal solution. 69% of Turkish Cypriots say the same. About 25%, 19% are saying that I have no idea or I don't know. And then a very small minority on both sides, around 10%, say that I have hope that the Cyprus problem will be resolved through a federal solution. And I always make this joke here that I don't know what these people smoke or drink. It's 10% that they have high hope. It's a joke again. But so this shouldn't be surprising in the sense that given the fact that the intercommunal negotiations started 47 years ago and that we have not reached a solution, how do we expect people to have high hopes? But We also turn the question into something else, and we ask, if you look at the upper part, but do you desire that the Cyprus problem should be resolved through a federal solution? Then, as you see, 68% of Greek Cypriots, 65% of Turkish Cypriots say that, yes, I do want the Cyprus problem to be resolved. And in a way, this result, in a way, legitimizes the ongoing negotiations that the two leaders are trying to reach. Other type of question that we asked many times was, if there is a referendum tomorrow, how are you going to vote? Traditionally, red represents Turkish Cypriots and blue represents Greek Cypriots. As you see, there is this here, 31% of Greek Cypriots who are saying that I would certainly or almost certainly vote no. So there is a huge block here, 1/3. And there is this 24% of Turkish Cypriots, 1/3 almost, who are what I call the diehard peaceniks, who would definitely say yes, whatever solution you put in front of them. But here, the most important finding is that majority of the people are in the middle. All right? So it depends on how you look at this. Whether you look at this as a glass half full. If you ask me, back in 2004, this was not much different before the referendum. But the final weeks, the final months of the referendum, run up to the referendum, the Greek Cypriot leader managed to galvanize these people here and push them to the no. That's why 76% said no. But through the right leadership, I think it is possible that the right leadership can also galvanize people, and instead of moving them this side, they can move them towards yes. So this is not a, let's say, pessimistic picture in my opinion. But continuing, now we are going to see on a timeline how these have changed. Starting with the hope that the peace process will produce results. This is Greek Cypriots, by the way. So, as you see, the trend was going up of being not hopeful, but then not hopeful started dropping. So we have data from 2009 all the way to present time. So it seems like, and this one being ambivalent, not sure, but the green line is becoming hopeful. So as you see, from 2012 up, the Greek Cypriots' hopes are going up. So that's good news. And you can see here that they got an election here in 2013, and after the election, it's quite clear that their hopes are going up. Same question for Turkish Cypriots. We had an election in 2015, remember? April, May. After the election, we see that hopes of Turkish Cypriots are also going up, at least a little bit. But not hopeful, being not hopeful is dropping, and being ambivalent is sort of about stable compared to last year. So, the summary of these two slides, in a way, tells us that there is hope that the peace process will actually produce results. It has gone up in both communities. So the hopes are going up in both communities. That's the trend, which is not bad. But we also look at the desire. Starting with the Greek Cypriots. Wishes for a positive outcome, which is the red as you see, is substantively increasing. This was not the case before, especially in 2012. The hopes, the desire was about 33. So it is increasing. Not desiring positive outcome is dropping, and being ambivalent is almost stable. So clearly we see that in the Greek Cypriots, the desire for a solution is going up, which is quite good. Now, for Turkish Cypriots, as you see here, the green line, the trend is wishing for a positive solution is dropping. So this is a quite alarming situation. Being ambivalent is, compared to last year, is almost stable, but no desire for a positive outcome is also increasing. Last year it was 12%, now it is 30%. People not desiring that there will be a solution. So something dynamic is happening within the Turkish Cypriot community in the last 1 year that things are not, especially for peace, things are not going to the right direction. One can say that, and let me summarize the two slides that we have already covered. Desire for a successful outcome of the peace process has been rising among Greek Cypriots, but falling among Turkish Cypriots. If I go back, you'll see that the trend started before. See? There was a peak here. This was 2010, when Talat and Christofias were negotiating. And then after 2010, there was an election in Turkish Cypriot side. Erdoğan became president, and then the desire started dropping. And then there is also a sharp drop here in 2014, and it continues. So the election of the Turkish Cypriot leadership here is not really the factor. So the trend started before. But I think what is happening now in the media, Turkish Cypriot media, where currently the leaders are negotiating the property issue, right? And there are a lot of what I call the spoilers are out there, who are spoilers, meaning those fearmongers who are saying that a solution will be bad, you are going to lose your properties and da-da-da-da. It is making a negative impact on a lot of Turkish Cypriots. That's why there is a shift towards not wanting, not desiring a federal solution. We'll continue. Motives for a settlement. Why would people want a settlement? Here we have tested many factors, ranging from improving economic situation, being able to live and work anywhere in Cyprus, achieving territorial unity of Cyprus, ending the threat that emanates from Turkey, fully enjoying the benefits of EU membership. So we have tested a lot of different factors. And this is for Greek Cypriots. This is for Turkish Cypriots. So I'm going to save you from all the details. I'll just jump to the summary. The primary findings here about the motives for a solution for Greek Cypriots is to end the threat that emanates from Turkey. So the reason that they want a solution is that they believe that through a solution, they believe that Turkey will no longer be a threat for Greek Cypriots. But at the same time, in the last few years, we also see that many Greek Cypriots are also saying that a solution will mean improvement of the economic situation. So improving the economic situation of the Greek Cypriot side is also a new motive for them to want a solution. For Turkish Cypriots, the primary motives are economic, that they believe that a solution will economically benefit them, that a solution will boost up their economic development, but at the same time, they believe that through a solution, they will be able to enjoy the benefits of the EU membership. Although individually they are EU citizens today, but nonetheless, on the communal level, they have not been benefiting from the EU membership fully. So that still is the main motive for Turkish Cypriots. We also tested throughout the years alternative solution models, ranging from unitary state to continuation of the current situation to a confederal solution to federation or two separate states. We tested all these different solution models. Here you see Greek Cypriots and their support for federation. What we see here is this trend. And the trend in the Greek Cypriot community nowadays is that a federal solution is tolerable if necessary, is increasing. So more and more Greek Cypriots are saying that, all right, a federation is tolerable if it is necessary. So that's also, I mean, given the past track record, it's not a negative result, but this is a positive result. For Turkish Cypriots, support for federation is actually dropping. Less and less people compared to last year finds a federal solution as satisfactory, all right? What is increasing in the Turkish Cypriot community nowadays, which is in line with their desire, is that more and more people are saying that it is a tolerable solution if it is necessary. And as you see, there is a slight trend but towards this direction. More people are saying that federation is entirely unacceptable. So the number of people saying that is increasing, which is in line with the results I showed you earlier. This is Greek Cypriots. Their support for two states. Definitely, it's not going anywhere. The Greek Cypriots totally reject the two-state solution. So there is no clear trend here that it is increasing or decreasing. It's quite solid that they reject a two-state solution. For Turkish Cypriots, it's interesting. There is, on the one hand, a group of people who are saying that two-state solution is entirely acceptable, and their number, although they are a minority, but it is increasing from 10% last year to 18%. Slightly, the number of people who are saying tolerable if necessary for two-state solution is somewhat stable, but those who are saying two-state solution is satisfactory, it is slightly going down. Support for unitary state, meaning a state where there will be one person, one vote. You wouldn't have a distinct Greek Cypriot or a Turkish Cypriot community, but a unitary state, all right, where Turkish Cypriots will be just natural minority. Very interestingly, support for unitary state among the Turkish Cypriots is slightly increasing, very interestingly. Strange result. For Greek Cypriots, support for unitary state is dropping, all right, who are saying this is satisfactory, but those who are saying this is tolerable if necessary is slightly increasing, and those who are saying this is entirely unacceptable is also increasing. Now, supporting the current status quo, things as they are, as you see here, the status quo is now being seen by Greek Cypriots slightly increasing from last year. They see status quo more and more unacceptable. They don't like the current situation more and more. As usual, the Turkish Cypriots are much more ambivalent, much more confused, I would say. Very interestingly, they are saying more and more that it is tolerable if necessary. And they are increasingly, again, they are saying that it is satisfactory. All right? So those who were saying it was entirely unacceptable, their number is dropping. So definitely something is happening with the Turkish Cypriot community. The overall summary of the last few slides, try to make your life easier by summarizing these complicated pictures. Majority of the Greek Cypriots, they consider federation to be a tolerable compromise, even as enthusiasm for federation has fallen among Greek Cypriots. But they are saying that it is tolerable if necessary. That trend is increasing. The Turkish Cypriots are increasingly open to a variety of options, including federation, unitary state, and continuation of the status quo. And I will leave this discussion to the end so that maybe some of you might have theories why this is the case, that the Turkish Cypriots are more, I would say, confused within quotation marks. Intended vote in a future referendum. All right? This is also very important. What will people vote in the future referendum? This is for the Greek Cypriots. As you see, there is a slight increase in the number of people who are saying that I would equally like to say both no or yes. So those who are in the middle, their number is increasing slightly. Those who are trending towards voting yes is also slightly increasing among the Greek Cypriots. And those who are intending to vote no is on the decrease. So there is a trend that Greek Cypriots who are saying that I will vote no, their number is decreasing. So, finally, the last few months that we have been seeing on our newspaper every day that the Turkish Cypriots are trending towards no, it is confirmed through our polls. As you see, this orange, sort of brown-orange line, compared to last year. Last year it was 28% of people who were saying that I am going to probably vote no. This year it is 40%. And the number of people, last year it was 35% who says that I am going to say yes, it is down to 28%. And those who are confused, their number is decreasing. So the number of people who are trending more towards no is increasing. This is a very clear trend here. See? So obviously something is going on that the leadership at least should take into consideration and take strategies accordingly if they want a yes vote, of course, in the future referendum. Summary for you to make your lives easier. Fewer Greek Cypriots now declare that they would vote no in a future referendum, while the majority are currently open-minded regarding what they would vote rather than committed to yes. Many Turkish Cypriots have shifted towards no vote, but yes, together with open-minded, still remains the majority. But, as I said, things are not optimistic as it was, let's say, back in 2003 and 2004. All right, so there is a trend definitely towards no. As you know, the two sides have been negotiating since 2008, when the first round of negotiations started. They have divided the Cyprus problem into 5 or 6 dossiers, issues. One area that they look at is governance and power sharing. Other area is economic issues. Third one is EU matters. Number 4 is property. Number 5 is territorial adjustment. And number 6 is security and guarantees. All right? And did I say 5 or 6? It's 6, right? And there is a 7th one, which is not really accepted as it is as the 7th one, but it can be also it is also discussed either within the governance and power sharing or in others. It is called citizenship. It's about the future of the Turkish immigrants, or what the Greek Cypriots say, Turkish settlers in Cyprus. So security is one of the important issues in the negotiations, and of course here is basically what will be the future security architecture of United Cyprus in terms of foreign defense, in terms of the defense of the country against outside. As you know, in 1960, Republic of Cyprus, which was established by 3 international treaties. One of the treaties was the Treaty of Guarantee, and one other was the Treaty of Alliance. Treaty of Alliance made it possible that Greece and Turkey could station permanent armies in Cyprus. To be more precise, there could be 950 Greek soldiers permanently stationed in Cyprus and 650 Turkish soldiers permanently stationed in Cyprus. And this was according to the Treaty of Alliance. But according to the Treaty of Guarantee, the 3 guarantor powers who established the Republic of Cyprus back in 1960, meaning Turkey, Greece, and United Kingdom, they were the guarantor powers who were guaranteeing 4 provisions. And these 4 provisions were security, independence, territorial integrity, and the constitutional order of the Republic of Cyprus. So here, under this dossier, security options, you know, we tested what will be the future security architecture in Cyprus and what will be the role of these former, I shouldn't say former because they are still guarantors, the 1960 guarantors. We tested what people think about Greece as a guarantor, Turkey as a guarantor, United Kingdom as a guarantor, but we also tested other options. What would people think about European Union or United Nations or NATO as guarantor powers, all right? So, these are the Greek Cypriots, by the way, all right? So I am not going to let you spoil your visions by these small garbage-like graphs. I'm going to summarize them nicely for you. And this is the picture for Turkish Cypriots. As you see, we have tested the trends from 2009 to 2015 for each of these options for both Turkish Cypriots and also Greek Greek Cypriots. So, the summary of the two complicated or detailed slides is that Greek Cypriots continue to reject Turkey, the UK, and Greece, aka Mother Greece or Motherland Greece, as guarantors, and they support, though with less enthusiasm in the last few years, the EU and the UN as guarantors. If we go back to these graphs, you will see that more Greek Cypriots used to support EU as a guarantor power before 2012. But the economic crisis on the Greek Cypriot side and the relations with Troika, with the EU and all that, their trust to EU institutions have dropped dramatically. So less and less number of Greek Cypriots compared to 2000 or the pre-2012 period, they are less and less trustful on EU institutions. The Turkish Cypriots, on the other hand, are much less enthusiastic than they used to be about Turkish guarantees. And they are more open to, again, relatively compared to the several years ago, they are more open to international guarantees from the EU, from the UN, or also from NATO. Okay, so that's the trend. Options for the federal executive. As I mentioned to you, one of the biggest issues in the negotiations, and maybe what we can term as the crux of the matter, meaning the main heart of the matter, it is all about governance and power sharing, meaning what will be the structure of the future constitution of the Republic of Cyprus, where the competencies and the powers of the state will be shared, divided and shared between the two communities. So that's very important. And among the governance and power sharing in the future constitution, relatively the most important issue within that is the executive power, meaning who will be the executive of the new federal state? Is it going to be a presidential system? Is it going to be a parliamentary system? Is it going to be a presidential council system, what we can call the Swiss model? All right, and the type of elections, are the Greek Cypriots elect only Greek Cypriots, or the Turkish Cypriots elect only Turkish Cypriots, or will there be cross-voting and all that? Complicated, but nonetheless very important. It is the crux of the matter, and now I'm going to show you the trends of what the Greek and Turkish Cypriots think about it. Especially there are three very important models that we have tested. This is for Greek Cypriots, of course. We have tested where there will be a system of presidential council, all right, which is very similar to 2004 Annan plan. In there, you wouldn't have a strong president and vice president, but you will have a presidential council, almost like a government, and symbolic president and symbolic vice president, where all the members of the presidential council were equal, and their votes were equal, where the president or the vice president wouldn't have a casting vote, all right? Quite democratic. That's the system. Presidential council with executive decisions by vote in the council. We have tested this in 2009 and 2015. The number of people who found this system unacceptable used to be 38%. Now it is down to 28% among Greek citizens. So there is clearly some move towards this model. We tested rotating presidency for ceremonial purposes with joint executive authority. Basically, what we are saying here is that there will be a ceremonial rotating presidency. The decisions in the executive will be taken jointly by Greek and Turkish Cypriot members, meaning president and vice president. Here you see 6 years ago, 48% of Greek Cypriots found this unacceptable. Now it is down to 37%. 32% find this desirable, and 31% says that it is tolerable. Right? We tested this third model, which is rotating presidency with executive authority vested in the president. The difference between this and this is that here the decision was made jointly by Greek Cypriot and Turkish Cypriot, but here the decision is made by the president, whoever he is, in a rotational manner. So there will be some times that it will be Greek Cypriot, he or she will make the decisions alone, and there will be some times it will be a Turkish Cypriot who will make the decisions by himself or herself. So as you see, by the Greek Cypriots, this is unacceptable. 70% in 2009 and 70% in 2015 are saying that this is not acceptable. So there's no sort of trend here that there's a solid block in this case. Instead of summarizing this, I just wanted to show you the detail here. Same questions for Turkish Cypriots. You know, no major difference almost in the Turkish Cypriots, but the only major difference I find here is in the rotating presidency, less number of people today compared to 6 years ago are finding this rotating presidency, executive authority by the president only desirable. So their desire is dropping. So the summary of these two slides, meaning about the executive branch, for the federal executive, both communities currently converge, meaning in a way agree, in supporting the option of a presidential council with executive decisions being made by vote in the council. So the summary of the summary, in a way, is that there is very little number of Greek Cypriots who will accept that in a rotating presidency that a Turkish Cypriot would be able to do or give decisions by himself or herself. So the summary of the summary is that joint decision making is much more acceptable on both sides. Okay. Bizonality. What is bizonality? Those of you who are taking my class, they know it. Bizonality is one of the most important parameters of a future solution of Cyprus, which was agreed upon by the two leaders in 77-79 high-level agreements, that in the future federation there will be 2 zones, and that each zone will be by and large administered by the respective community. And the UN Secretary General describes bizonality in a relevant UN document as one community who is governing that zone should have the clear majority as well as clear majority of the property. Clear majority in the population as well as clear majority of the property ownership. All right? So that's the common understanding of bizonality. So we tested how this trend goes. Again, I'm going to save you from all these details. For bizonality, both communities currently converge in supporting a compromise whereby most Greek Cypriots will live in the south and most Turkish Cypriots will live in the north, but people will still be free to live anywhere they like. Now here, the traditional positions of Greek Cypriots should be, was that they don't like bisonality. They don't like the idea that there will be permanent restrictions on the freedom of settlement and the freedom of property ownership throughout the island. They don't like the idea. On the contrary, the Turkish Cypriots, since they are afraid of the size of the population of Greek Cypriots, and at least hypothetically, but they believe that there is a possibility that the Greek Cypriots in the future might settle down in the north, in the Turkish Cypriot constituent state, and that they are richer and they can purchase more and more property, that in some future, the Turkish Cypriots might lose their majority in terms of population as well as property ownership in the north. In that sense, the traditional negotiation position of the Turkish Cypriots have been, since the 70s, to have two of the three freedoms, which were freedom of movement, freedom of settlement, and freedom to buy property. Two of these, meaning freedom of settlement and freedom to own property, should be restricted in the federated zones. All right? So, but this might be a compromise, meaning that by and large, majority who lives in the north will be Turkish Cypriot, and majority who lives in the south will be Greek Cypriot, but that people should not be restricted if they want to settle down in the other zone of the federation. I think this is the last issue, citizenship, very important. We tested here 4 options. All persons from Turkey to return to Turkey except intermarried and offsprings. This is what is desirable for Greek Cypriots, although it dropped since the last 6 years, but it is still majority. Persons from Turkey who have lived in Cyprus for decades and their families to remain. As you see, this is rejected by a majority of Greek Cypriots, no matter whether it was 4 years ago or whether it is today. Up to 50,000 persons from Turkey to remain as citizens of the reunited Cyprus. We tested the Annan Plan model. This was the case in 2004. It is rejected by Greek Cypriots, and there's no trend here. Majority rejected. All persons from Turkey to remain as citizens of northern constituent states. Again, highly rejected by the majority of Greek Cypriots. So, that's the trend. For Turkish Cypriots, of course, they prefer here their majority, persons from Turkey who have lived in Cyprus for decades and their families to remain. So the summary of this, two seemingly complicated slides, is that for citizenship, Greek Cypriots prefer that all persons from Turkey should return to Turkey, except those who intermarried and their offspring can stay, while Turkish Cypriots prefer that persons from Turkey who have lived in Cyprus for decades, along with their families, should remain. So this is the trend here. What do we make of all these findings when it comes to the Cyprus issue today? I'm going to open this up for your questions, but let me say a few things about what I think. the last couple of years I've developed this terminology and this argument that in order to find a solution in Cyprus, we have to blend idealism with pragmatism. And my idealism comes from my deep personal ideological choice or conviction that Cyprus is a multi-ethnic society, and it's not a nation state, and the paradigm of nation state should not be imposed on Cyprus. And I think the 1960 republic in its own time was a progressive model. It was not a nation state model. It was a consociational model, but it didn't work. But in any case, I am somebody who believes that in multi-ethnic societies we should not impose nation state. If we do, then we have a lot of baby nation states. Just like in Iraq today, practically you have 3 nation states. One with the capital Erbil, the other one Baghdad, and the other one there you go. Or in the future, Syria, we might end up not having 1 state, but we might end up having 3 states. And is that good or bad? Well, for me it's not good. But in any case, we can discuss it. My pragmatism, of course, comes from my deep sort of this cool-headed calculation of trying to reach what is possible and what is actualizable on the ground now instead of 50 years from now. And all these public opinion poll results, they show us that, okay, the first preference of the Turkish Cypriots in Cyprus is 2-state, fine. But the first preference of Greek Cypriots is a unitary state. And a federal solution is the second choice of both Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots, right? And also the poll results show us that the Turkish Cypriots will not, majority at least, will not accept the unitary state of the Greek Cypriots, a solution that would put them into a minority status. And the Greek Cypriots, at least currently, are not going to accept the 2 states. So the poll results show us that if we are going to reach a solution in Cyprus based on negotiations, and that solution will be put to simultaneous separate referenda, the only option that has the chance to pass from both referenda, whether you like it or not, is a federation. None of the others. All right? So it is the second choice or the second preference of each side. Many years ago, a UN diplomat whom I interviewed, who was the special advisor of the Secretary General in Cyprus, by the name Gustav Faisal, he told me that the solution in Cyprus will be the one that will make each side slightly unhappy. And I thought about it. It's like, why slightly unhappy? Today, I'm in the position to understand it in the sense that, yes, each side is not going to get 100% of its demand, but maybe 80 or 85% of their demand satisfied. There will be that 10-15% which will not be satisfied, and that part will make you a bit unhappy. All right? But for some people, that's the way to go. But for some people who are more stubborn, that might not be the way to go. In my opinion, what is missing in Cyprus today is, okay, a solution, a settlement, but much more important than that, we should be also get prepared for the day one after the referendum. Meaning, are we ready for a federal solution as Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots? Because at the end of the day, a federal solution, I describe it as what I call a mega cooperation structure. But then we should ask ourselves this question: what is the level of cooperation? What is the experience? What is the amount of cooperation experience between Greek and Turkish Cypriots in the last half century? Very little, close to none. So, in my opinion, by having this lack of experience in cooperation, how are we going to jump from today, lack of experience of cooperation, to a federal solution, which would mean a mega cooperation structure which requires you to cooperate? So in my opinion, and I've been saying this for the last, let me think, my PhD thesis. It's been a good 16, 17 years. I've been saying that the leaders level negotiations, what is known as track 1 negotiations, they are important. I'm not belittling it. It's very important because at the end of the day, it will be the two leaders who are going to reach an agreement and sign it. But that is not enough. The time between today, well, yesterday, until the day after the referendum should be utilized very carefully, and that period should be filled by experiences of cooperation between the two communities, which will prepare the Greek and Turkish Cypriots for a federal solution, which means sharing power. So for that purpose, I have been proposing that in parallel to the ongoing leaders level negotiations, we need a parallel track. I like the word parallel. We need a parallel track independent of what is happening in the negotiations, a parallel track on what I call confidence building measures, so that we can change the very lives of average Turkish and Greek Cypriots to the better. That once they cooperate on an issue, they can understand that, hey, cooperation between Greek and Turkish Cypriots is possible, but more importantly, that it is desirable, it is something good. And by saying that, what I had in mind, quite related to how, for example, the whole EU project came into life. Remember, it started as the community of coal and steel, the two areas that 6 actors started to cooperate. And once they were successful, it spilled over to other functional areas. So I think that that should be the way to go. And people ask me, what kind of confidence building measures? I always say, you know, the sky is the limit. For example, my phone works everywhere, almost everywhere. The last several countries that I have traveled the last 1 year could be from the Iraqi Kurdistan to Bahrain to Germany to Belgium, anywhere. It works in all these countries. But when I cross the buffer zone a few hundred meters away from the Turkish Cypriot side into the Greek Cypriot side, this baby starts working, stops working. Isn't that stupid? The same for a Greek Cypriot. Whenever he or she comes to the north, a few hundred meters into the north, that sucker stops working. I said, why don't we start cooperating on, you know, having the two roaming systems united, for God's sakes? Is it that difficult? Talk about confidence building measure, right? A few months ago, I was interviewed by a Greek Cypriot channel, and they asked me, what kind of confidence building measure? I said, look, the buffer zone, remember there is a buffer zone in Cyprus which is 180 kilometers long, and its width ranges from 5 meters to, I think, a couple of kilometers. What does buffer mean? Buffer means something that separates two things, that cuts the contact. And you know, when there are warring sides, when there are people slaughtering one another, a buffer is good, right? It serves for a purpose. It divides, separates people, fine. But why don't we transform today's buffer zone, which is separating the two sides, into a space where it unites the two sides? Can't we convert the buffer zone here in Cyprus into a space where it connects people? It provides a space where people can cooperate. And the speaker asked me on the TV, he says, so what kind of project? I said, why don't we establish a joint university, Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots? Or why don't we establish a joint program between two universities? And the speaker asked me, she says, but is that possible? I said, look, if we cannot establish a joint program, two universities, how are we going to establish a federation for God's sakes? All right? So, you know, to finish up, and I can take some of your questions. I used to be a romantic federalist. I'm still a federalist, a staunch one, but not a romantic one. My romanticism has sort of died out throughout the years. Look, what I envisage for Cyprus, and I coined this term several years ago, if we manage to establish a federation in Cyprus between Greek and Turkish Cypriots, I call this Belgianization of Cyprus. And you know, sometimes, you know, I talk about this in conferences and stuff, and people say, oh, Professor, you got it wrong. Belgium is not a good model of federation, don't you know? And I was like, okay, stop insulting my, you know, intelligence. I've been to Belgium many times, and I know that it's not the best system, but nonetheless, you know, in the north you have the Dutch-speaking Flemish, and in the south you have the French-speaking Walloons. And Brussels is a bilingual city and all that, but by and large there are two communities, except the German minority. But remember a few years ago they had this general elections, and more than 400 days they were not able to establish a government. Remember that? Yeah. What happened to Belgium? I think the answer is very important. What happened to Belgium? Anybody who wants to answer? What happened to Belgium?
Nothing.
One word. Excuse?
Nothing. This is
Nothing. Very good. And I said, isn't this great? Nothing. The two communities were not agreed on something, and because of that, nobody killed one another, and the country was not flushed down the drain. And I said, isn't that great? It continued. So this is what I envisage in Cyprus. I'm not envisaging that there will be a, you know, love story and all that between the two communities, because, I mean, it's not going to be a marriage. The marriage was tried back in '60, and you know what happened, in my opinion? One spouse beat the shit out of the other one, and the other spouse got his big brother and beat the shit out of the other one, and there's a sort of family feud and a mess. So what I envisage by this Belgian model is a model where we will have a rational business partnership for a start, I would say. And then if this rational partnership grows into love, I don't mind. I would love that. But if it doesn't, that's okay too. You know? Then we will continue, you know, living in the very same island by respecting each other's distinct, you know, cultural, linguistic, or whatever difference. Because in my own opinion, the extreme opposite of Belgianization is what I call it Syrianization. And definitely I wouldn't prefer Cyprus being Syrianized. I prefer a Belgianized Cyprus. So this is what I have for you, and I'm ready for your questions now. Yes?
Well, thank you very much indeed for the presentation and also for the big work. It was very significant. I have a quick question regarding the sampling.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, you said you checked with the 1,000 people in the south and 1,000 people
in most of the in the polls. There was one where we had a smaller sample, but those were all samples that would give us results with only a couple of percent. What do you call that? Couple of percent. Yeah.
And I wonder whether each year you randomly sampled people.
Yes, we did.
You randomly sampled.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Because I had in mind whether it would make any difference in the results. It would be very costly and very difficult, I know, to check with the very same people that you started.
That would be fantastic. But unfortunately that was not the case. Each time we, of course it was not myself and my teammates who would go and interview people, but let me see if I have the acknowledgement here. Unfortunately, I think we don't have it. But we use different polling companies, both in the Greek Cypriot side as well as in the Turkish Cypriot side. So here are if you look at the acknowledgement, you see the research team, the current ones as well as past associates, including your department chair. We have the donors and partners, like the USAID, UNDP Act, EU Commission. And for the field work, as you see, we have worked with CIMAR, Market Research, University of Cyprus Center for Fieldwork, RAI Consultants, Simetron, and in the Turkish Cypriot side, we work with Prolog. That's Mine Yücel. We also work with Kadem before War and Fight. So we have worked with very prestigious and trustworthy companies.
If I ask one more
Yes.
question, please. Did they keep the number of people they asked from the same regions at least?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the sample was quite representative of both the regions as well as the age distribution of people. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? Go on.
The presidential council that we spoke about, I'm wondering how the members would be chosen and what sort of executive voting power would be given to them. Would they have a veto right?
The particular one in 2004 in the failed UN peace plan, known as the Annan Plan, according to that, there would have been at least 6 members of the Presidential Council, and it says with the voting rights, each one equal, and it said at least 1/3 will come from each constituent state. So practically meant that 2 out of 6 will be Turkish Cypriots, practically. And as far as I remember, the decisions would be taken by consensus. And if consensus is not possible, it will be simple majority, but provided that one from each constituent state will give his or her consent on the decision. So that means that if the two Turkish Cypriots out of 6 would say no, then the decision wouldn't pass. It was more like a hidden veto, I would say. in that case.
This was the Annan.
Yes, this was the Annan plan. Yeah. Of course, you know, these 6 members are regarded as the members of a cabinet. Each one has a ministerial portfolio. But of course, in a country, you know, 6 as a government, as a cabinet is so small. So the plan also made it possible that there are also non-voting members, but who will be elected in the same proportion, but without having voting rights. So the whole council could be increased to 9, meaning 3 more non-voting members. Then this time it will be 6 Greek Cypriots and 3 Turkish Cypriots. If it is 12, it's going to be 8 Greek Cypriots, 4 Turkish Cypriots, but only 6 of them has the right to vote. And symbolically among themselves in this cabinet, one will be the president, because a country needs a president. Somebody, the head of the state, who should be going and representing the country in foreign platforms. So one will be the president and one will be the vice president, not coming from same constituent state, and there will be rotation. And the presidential council's tenure was 60 months, which was 5 years. So there would be rotation. The first 20 months, it will be somebody who is coming from the more populous constituent state, practically a Greek Cypriot. Then the next 20 months, it will be a Turkish Cypriot, the president, while the other one is vice president. And then the third term, again, a Greek Cypriot being president and Turkish Cypriot being the vice president. So that was the Annan plan and the rotational system within the presidential council, also known as the Swiss model. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Thanks once more for the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
I have this little worry, although I'm not a Cypriot, but I have this little worry when it comes to the track 1 negotiation specifically. For example, the presence of these foreign bases, the bases of some of these guarantor states, what becomes their legal basis after the, let's say there is a federation, what becomes the legal basis for these foreign military bases?
What happens, you're saying, to the military, to the militaries in Cyprus, or the military bases?
The military bases.
Well, there is of course, the British bases, but their status was based in the 1960 founding treaties, meaning it's, especially the treaties, the Treaty of Establishment, Treaty of Alliance, and Treaty of Guarantee. They are also in the Constitutional Republic of Cyprus within unalterable articles, as far as I understand. Plus, of course, they were also in the Treaty of Accession to the EU, that these are, you know, sovereign British bases, that they belong to the empire, meaning Her Majesty's countries, and that they will continue whatsoever in any of the future solution. What the British did last time during the Annan Plan, and I think they are repeating it now, is to sweeten the pot, so to speak, is that they are saying that if there is a solution in Cyprus, we are going to give up part of the British bases and we will give it to the future United Republic of Cyprus. So, but by and large, they will continue because legally, you know, we are bound with that, unless, you know, there is a joint revolution of Greek and Turkish Cypriots and they kick the British out, but I doubt it pretty much, because although Cyprus has been a non-aligned country, and if you look at the Gali's set of ideas, or even the 77, 79 high-level agreements, it is agreed that Cyprus will be non-aligned. And I always ask myself, why non-aligned? Because the three guarantor powers, they belong to NATO. Why not NATO? Because, you know, you think that you need the consent of the United Nations, the very actor under which we have been conducting the negotiations. It is always under the UN auspices that we have conducted the negotiations, and you need the Security Council endorsement, I think. And there, of course, the Russians wouldn't like to see Cyprus as being a member of NATO, just like they wouldn't like to see Ukraine as a member of NATO, right? At the end of the day, but in practice, my point is this. Although Cyprus is non-aligned, nonetheless, the Brits are here with their bases, and the Americans can also use those bases. And these bases are used as the listening posts, very important listening posts in this region. And you know, have you seen the size of the satellite dishes in the British bases? When you cross here from Famagusta to Dikelia? I mean, they are huge. It's not like the satellite dish in your apartment where you receive Hotbird or Turkstat. I'm talking about 10,000 times bigger dishes. When I saw that sucker, I was like, oh my God, what is this? It seems like they have been listening, and they can intercept any type of communication going on in this area. Including this one. So say hi in the candid. So I don't think that they will easily give up on that. Yeah.
The reason I asked is because I heard from a reliable source, which I won't want to mention here.
Reliable source.
Yeah, very reliable.
Is it WikiLeaks?
No, sir.
No.
Very reliable.
We will not listen to this.
Go on.
I mean, it was very reliable, very reliable. So
Okay.
I'm sure some of the other students here, there are some
Yes.
students who were together, and it was very reliable. And the argument which was given was that the British bases which are found here have no legal founding. They have no legal basis. So the reason why they are trying to sweeten the pot, like saying that we are going to give part of the base to a military, to a federal Cyprus, is so that by so doing, when they sign that agreement, it therefore has a legal basis.
I don't know who your reliable source and what he or she has been smoking or drinking, but I don't think that that's the case. I mean, you can ask Wojciech next to you. He is the expert in international law. But I've never seen him drunk, so I think it's not probably him. No, but I think that they have a very firm and very strong legal basis, whether we like it or not. So, yeah, go on, please.
What's the view of United Nations as regard to the problem and solution to this problem?
Say again.
The view of the United Nations as regard to the solution of this problem.
The view of who?
The view of United Nations.
The view of United Nations. Well, they have a mandate in Cyprus, and their mandate in Cyprus since 2000, it's a Freudian slip, since 1964, that's United Nations Security Council Resolution 186, which authorized the stationing of the UN FISIP, UN force, UN peacekeeping force in Cyprus. Since then, the role of the UN is what is known as mission of good offices. Mission of good offices. And you might ask, what is this mission of good offices? Well, it's a, you know, in a theoretical perspective, it's a third-party intervention. Suppose there is a continuum, starts from this continuum where you have, in a conflict situation, no intervention of a third party, just negotiation of two parties. And on the other extreme of this continuum, you have the full intervention of the third party, which can go all the way to arbitration, meaning the third party can decide and the decision will be binding on the two sides. And in between there is a scope of things where third party interventions can be categorized. Somewhere in the middle is mediation. The third party mediates in a conflict. But then mediation can vary. Will the mediator have the right to put proposals on the table or not? There are mediators with the right to put, let's say, bridging proposals on the table. But there are mediators with restricted, let's say, missions. The mission of good offices is somewhere close to here, this side, even below mediator. Basically, the mission of good offices is a third party which offers its mission to the two sides, meaning the third party provides the venue, meaning the place where the negotiations take place. It takes notes and facilitates the negotiations. Full stop. That's mission of good offices. All right? But of course, if the two sides in the conflict decides and they agree upon, they can increase the role of the third party. This was the case just before the referendum in Cyprus in 2004. In February 2004, from February 2004 to April 2004, in the final negotiations, at the end of that process, the UN role was enhanced with the consent of the two sides, because at that point, in April, in Bürgenstock, the UN, in the final week of the negotiations, the UN was given the chance to fill in all the gaps in the peace settlement. There was a time period. They said the two sides will negotiate until this period, and after that there will be 1 week that if the two sides have not reached an agreement on all points, and there are some slots empty, those empty slots will be filled by the UN. So in that sense, the final 1 week or whatever, that period the UN was not operating as a mission of good offices, but operating more like an arbiter, all right? But the traditional role of UN in Cyprus is mission of good offices, all right? I have one question over there. Mohammed? Good afternoon.
Well, sir, you are talking about the cooperation between two sides, Greek Cypriot and Turkish Cypriot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in my belief, what I believe is that if there is UK and the Turkish and the Greeks, those three guarantor power in Cyprus,
Mm-hmm.
I think to me, cooperation is too difficult because Turkey has the interest
Uh-huh.
on this island. Turkey have the interest in northern Cyprus, but they can't leave to join together. Turkey authority doesn't care the Cyprus problem much like the authority
Mm-hmm.
talking northern Cyprus and the academician.
Right. I got your point.
Turkey to have interest that if they leave this island join together, it means it will interest. Greek, UK United Nations implemented one idea, what you call as the buy and conquer, 1960, because they gained piece of the land in the
Mm-hmm.
zone.
Yeah.
So those guarantor power are the main problem of joint negotiating. If they leave the Cyprus issue to the United Nations and the European Union, to me, now the Cyprus problem is solved because those three countries that are guarantor power have interest on this island.
Thank you so much. I got your point. That's, of course, one view, and I respect that, but I don't agree with it. Maybe at the very beginning, the problem started as a problem of nationalism, Greek and Turkish nationalism. I mean, the whole discourse on enosis and Taksim, or union of the island with Greece and partitioning of the island, those started, and they are the remnants of Greek and Turkish nationalism. And it's all this, what I call, at the very beginning in the 50s and 60s, the obsession of the two communities with the idea of joining its own nation state. Instead of that, meaning Turkish Cypriots joining with Turkey, being the bigger nation state, and Greek Cypriots joining with, or the whole Cyprus joining with Greece, another big nation state. Instead, they were given this, for the time, a progressive model, this consociational model, Republic of Cyprus. But I think, as we say in Turkish, it was two sizes bigger for the Cypriots, I think. And they were so much obsessed with the nation state thing that they rejected it. But today, I think that's not the case. As you see, Greek Cypriots, even they reject Greece as a future guarantor in Cyprus. So it's not the same dynamics that we have today as it was, how many years ago? More than 50 years ago, when we talk about the 1960 Republic of Cyprus. Today, of course, for Turkey, what I can tell you is this. Maybe Cyprus is not high on their agenda. Maybe Turkey is not as proactive as it was compared to 2003, 2004. But in my opinion, of course, feel free to challenge me. In my opinion, I think that Turkey does not have the luxury to reject a bizonal, bicommunal federation in Cyprus mutually reached by the Greek and Turkish Cypriot leaders. I don't think that they have the luxury to reject it. I don't think that they have the luxury to tell the international community that, yeah, since 77 and 79, and even before this federal thesis, which was originally a Turkish thesis, yeah, we don't like it anymore, and we reject all these UN documents and agreements. I don't think that they have the luxury to do that. So, in my opinion, if the two leaders, currently Mr. Akıncı and Mr. Anastasiadis, if they manage to solve what is known as the substantive issues, the domestic issues which are related to Cyprus, and that they are left only with one issue left, which is the guarantees, I think that it will be a big pressure on the guarantors to make some concessions. And in the last analysis, when the push comes to the shove, as they say in English, I think that all guarantors will make concessions, if that's the case, if the two leaders solve the domestic substantive issues. Go on.
Actually, you almost answered my question. I was going to ask whether you think we are in the agenda, or we have a high priority in the agenda of the international community at the moment. They're still dealing with the aftermath of the Great Recession. They're dealing with all the problems in the Middle East and everything. And then we are waiting for foreign secretaries to come here. And just a week before, they cancel it because of their own agenda. So I just wanted to.
It tells you a lot about where you are in the agenda of the international community. Look, yeah, go on.
Whether you think that we will be able to get to a higher priority in, let's say, the time that we think peace might be possible.
Thank you.
Like next year or so.
I mean, I had also, I had some opportunities this year, a few months ago, to be in Berlin and in Brussels, where I had meetings at the German Chancellery, as well as Foreign Ministry and the Energy Ministry, as well as European Parliament and Commission. Okay, they know Cyprus. but when it comes to where we are in terms of the priority list, you know, let's be realistic. I mean, okay, we the Cypriots might think that this is the center of the world and everything revolves around us and da-da-da-da, but, you know, we are talking about Syria today, we are talking about ISIS, we are talking about Russia intervening in Syria and a renewed Cold War. The sort of chess game of the West and Russia in Ukraine and whatnot. I was also in Ukraine 2 months ago, and there I also had some observations. You know, these are the priorities of the international community, and the deal with Iran, for example, and the future relations with Iran. And now United States and Russia is almost cooperating in Syria and whatnot. So Cyprus, well, a solution in Cyprus is going to be nice. That's what they think. It's going to be nice. You know, we will use this as a nice example and whatnot, but it is not, I would say, within the first number 10 priority issues of the international community. Of course, in different levels, there are people who are pushing for it, right? Definitely the new UN ambassador here, the US ambassador here, the previous one, and certain desks within the State Department in the United States and in some of the European countries, some of the related diplomats. But when it comes to the leaders level, it's not really high on the agenda yet. But if the two leaders, especially nowadays they are discussing the property issue, which is one of the most thorniest issue in Cyprus problem, if the two leaders manage to break that, meaning if they can reach a breakthrough on the property issue, then there is a good chance that we will be in a tunnel with little chance to go back. And once you are in a tunnel, if somebody starts pushing water from one side, you have only one side to run. And that means that the two sides might run towards a solution, which will bring it that time the three guarantor powers to make that final decision, whether they are going to make compromise on the guarantees and security issue. And it is then that the international community with the leaders, be it Merkel, be it Obama, Kerry, whatever, who will be in the loop, and you know, they will be making more telephone calls and they'll be doing more visits that they normally don't do. But we are not there yet. In my own opinion, a referendum in the spring is a dream. I've been saying this very openly. No matter how much I like and support the current Turkish Cypriot leader, he sometimes spelled this out, this date, but I don't personally think that it is realistic. I'm saying this as somebody who was also once part of the negotiation team and has seen the, how the process operates. There are a lot of details that needs to be ironed out. Okay, the two leaders by the end of spring can reach an agreement on the fundamental principles. No doubt on that. It's possible, definitely. But if you are telling me that in a future referendum we are going to include the peace plan plus the constituent of the future state and the constituent, the constitution of the federal state and the constituents of the constitutions of the constituent states, as well as all the federal laws ready to be as the additions of the a future referendum, I don't think that it is, I wouldn't say humanly impossible. It is humanly possible, but not Mediterraneanly possible. Because, we also operate differently here. We have too many distractions. And we operate, as I said, differently. We are much more laid back compared to other nations. So, but in my opinion, a referendum sometime before 2016 is definitely possible if the two leaders agree on the main parameters of a solution by, let's say, sometime in spring next year. Then a referendum is possible before the end of the year next year, in my opinion. So, have a question, Ilke? Somebody? Yeah, go on.
I think, if I did not misunderstand, I think you summarized opinions of Turkish Cypriots about continuing the status quo or reaching a federal
Right.
solution and other options as you said that it showed that Turkish Cypriots are rather confused on those matters. But a few slides later, Turkish Cypriots seemed a little less confused and more decided on whether they would say yes or no in a future referendum. Like they were.
They are a bit. They are. They are.
Undecided group was becoming smaller.
They are confused regarding the models in Cyprus. So they are saying okay to a federation to a certain extent. They are saying okay to the continuation of the status quo, and there are even some Turkish Cypriots who are saying okay to a unitary state. So in that sense, they are confused in which model. But when it comes to the trends in terms of how they are going to vote in a future referendum, definitely the last 1 year, the trend is towards no. So there is increased no. Still, when I said trend, that doesn't mean that the majority. When you look at the majority is either going to vote yes or that they are somewhere in between. That's 60%. But 40% are now saying that I'll probably say no. And that was not the case last year. The case last year was something like 28% or something. So there is an increase from last year. So the trend is towards no, but still majority can be gained. Let me put it that way. The majority can vote yes still. But if this trend continues, I won't be able to say this next year. So.
I found it interesting that the middle section, people who are saying either yes or who are not decided on what they would say, is also becoming smaller. So kind of people are deciding.
Let's look at it. Let's look at it more clearly, more closely, so that we can understand. That's the intended vote of Turkish Cypriots. Now, the trend towards no, as you see, is increasing. The trend who are in the middle is decreasing, and the trend towards yes is decreasing. So you're right. So it seems like people are making their decisions. So if this trend continues as such to next year, meaning beyond 2015, then it's problematic in a future referendum.
But what's your analysis of the situation? Why do you think this is happening? I mean, how do you explain it?
You tell me. I mean, what are your theories, or what are your projections?
No,
Why?
one thing you have mentioned already, and I could also talk about that maybe, this property owners, you know.
Yes.
They have this huge issue about returning back Greek Cypriot properties, and this seems to be, you know, the vested interest in keeping the status quo as it is seems to be dominating, but I don't know. If
Seems like that discourse is sticking there. Fine.
Yes.
But, you know, look at this here. That's the election of Mustafa Akıncı. So the trend started before him.
Yeah.
That confuses me.
And
So it was not like, you know, Mustafa Akıncı was elected and he started negotiating and then he's selling the cause of the Turkish Cypriots. The trend started earlier, which is,
something else
Yeah.
you mentioned also made me think. You said that in your research you found that Turkish Cypriot support for the guarantorship of Turkey is on a decline, right?
yes,
It's declining.
compared
but
to
this-
last years, yes.
So it's a strange situation. They supported Akıncı, but they actually are less and less supportive of Turkey's guarantorship, and they are less and less supportive of a solution. So it's not very easy to kind of.
Of course not. You know, what is the percentage of Akıncı's support? Remember?
60.
No, no. I'm
What?
sorry. The first round.
The first round.
First round.
20.
Yeah. It was 20 something, right?
The first round.
So 28.
28.
28.
And 22 for Sibel.
There you go.
And 10% from Kudret.
20% put at the other side. Yes. No, it was 27 Erol was below Akıncı. So it was what Akıncı mainly got. It was in the second round, and that doesn't mean that all these 60% that Akıncı got are the supporters of a federal solution.
Sure. No.
So, and I think that he's clever enough. He's actually telling Anastasiadis that, you know, Regumbare, this is not the case. So don't think that 60% are supporting the federation without any problem. That's not the case, because he got a lot of reaction votes who did not want to vote for the other guy and da-da-da-da. So,
Would it be wrong to think that, I mean, we say trend, but for trend we need longer term, right?
of course.
But if we look at the whole picture from 2009 till
Yeah.
2015, I see that we are sort of fluctuating around
Yeah.
the mean
Sort of confused.
of
Up, down, up, down, up, down, right?
Yeah,
It's more like up, down, up, down, up, down.
nothing changed.
But what I'm saying is, okay, very good point. But if this trend continues next year,
Okay.
and we have a referendum next year,
And it will-
that's my point,
that's the point.
you know? How are you going to secure a yes? But of course, you know, you will have all these, what we call interventions, meaning Akıncı will go out and tell the public that, look, this is a good deal, blah, 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 blah. Maybe myself and Umut will go out on the TV or give an interview and say, this is good enough deal. It will start changing people's minds, but I don't know how successful the campaign will be conducted. If the scaremongers are more successful, if the, what we call, in every conflict situation, every negotiation situation, there are what we call spoilers always there. If they have the upper hand and if they dominate the public discourse, then it is problematic. That was the case before the Annan Plan and the Greek Cypriot side. All the spoilers were out and they were making a lot of noise. It's not that their number is huge. They are a minority, by the way. Maybe they are the 1/5 or 1/4 of the population in the Greek Cypriots. When you look at all these, what we call traditional OHI or traditional no parties, like DIKO and EDEK and Evroko and whatnot, all together they are what, like 15, 20 something percent? 25%, all right? But their voice is coming very strong, you know? I'll take the last question and then, yeah.
Analysis, but when we also looked at the presidential campaigns in the last presidential election here, it was more focused on internal issues than Cyprus problem as well.
It was focused on more?
More focused on internal politics than on Cyprus problem as well. Especially the Sivas campaign, it was mainly talking about, I think that might have affected people's perception
Could be. I mean, Akıncı was not totally on the Cyprus problem. As you know, he had this three-tier campaign. Three-tier campaign. One tier was on the Cyprus issue, where we were pretty much plagiarized, you know, which was good. I mean, don't do plagiarism, by the way. I mean, plagiarism in university and academics is bad. But if a politician is plagiarizing you, that might be good. You feel, you know. But in any case, so Ilke, what do you think was the effect of focusing on the internal domestic issues?
First of all, I think the so-called no camp has had the upper say in the last year regarding to what will happen, and the yes camp has not been able to provide something in place. So I think there's been more sort of fear instead of hope pumped into society.
Could be.
And I think the Greek trend can be explained by the fact that they have more economic concerns, which has downsized their nationalistic attitude.
Look, what you need in a successful campaign, if you want to have a positive result in a successful campaign, what you need is something tangible, or something that is perceived as tangible. In marketing strategies, you can also do things like wonders that, you know, something is not really tangible, but, you know, with the right communication strategy and whatnot. But what was tangible back in 2003 and 2004 was there. It was the UN peace plan. First version, second, third, whatever, but there was a peace plan already there. We could read it. We could say on the TV, yes, Article 5, item number 4, second sentence. It was there. We can hold it in our hands so we can use it in the campaign. Right now, we don't have anything yet of that sort. So maybe before the referendum, when there will be a text that the two leaders will be able to use in the campaign, then the whole picture can change, depending on how successful the two leaders have these communication strategies and how they manage to galvanize the population towards the vision that they put. Because at the end of the day, what does leadership mean? Somebody who leads, somebody not really following the people, but somebody who's, you know, leading the people. So, thank you very much for your patience and good luck.